What's up? I'm Danny Myers, the Bard Guy. We are back with another Parallel Universe podcast. I could not have my normal host, Anti-Fable, the homeboy Dark Rain. They got busy this weekend. It's all good. We'll be back this coming week. So I got two special guests with me. Introduce yourself.
I am Apollo Paul, aka Cliche Crazy.
Okay.
You can catch me on Instagram, Apollo_Paul_.
Alrighty.
And I am Angel, aka Dream Corridor. I don't really pump my social media, so that's just all I am. Let's go from there.
He's too cool for that shit.
Too cool.
These guys are horror movie experts. We will be delving into some of their top 10 favorite horror movies personally.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into a little more horror movie discussion. So let's get into it. Apollo Paul, man.
Alright.
Let me get your top 10 horror films of all time.
My number 10 is Event Horizon.
Alright.
I chose it because it's got great hellish imagery that I'm really into. It's got a lot of, shocking moments. It's more of a cult classic, I guess you could say.
It is.
And it kind of has that Hellraiser sort of vibe to it.
It do. Lawrence Fishburne did his thing in that too.
And I love Hellraiser. I love that series as well. And with Event Horizon, I feel like when you hear about a horror movie that's in outer space, you think maybe it's going to be corny, or maybe it's going to be like, oh, a horror movie in outer space. You think like those Jason X type movies. But this came before all that shit, and it actually is genuinely a good movie. It's basically like a haunted house film
in
a spaceship.
And I really just to kind of touch on it a little bit. I mean, the premise of that, it's if you think about it, like you imagine a horror movie in space, you imagine aliens and stuff, but nobody really thinks like, hellish stuff, supernatural stuff set in outer space. You don't really see that often, right?
Yeah, that was unique at the time it dropped. Yo, that was actually a pretty dope film. Who was that?
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill's in it, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
The same guy who did Resident Evil, same guy who did the Mortal Kombat movie. So, yeah.
Look,
It's one of his
insight
better
there.
ones, yeah.
Alright, what's next on your list?
For number 9, I picked Candyman.
Nice.
You can't go wrong with Candyman. I think one of the best parts of the movie is actually the music. The score of that film is just fucking bonkers, and it's got great lore to it, and I mean, the guy they picked to play Candyman, obviously.
Is that Tony Todd?
Yeah. You can't really beat Tony Todd when it comes to someone who's very imposing.
Yeah,
he's creepy already.
Yeah, exactly.
Without no movie setting. if I met him at Target, I'd be like, oh shit, it's him.
Hey man, one of the things I really liked about the movie too is that that might have been a movie that was made at a time when they could have done more than just practical effects, but they still went in for practical effects.
Yeah.
Of there's a shot where he gets sucked out the window, and it's not there's no CG glass or anything. They didn't
They wired him up and pulled him back.
They didn't skip out on the whole bees thing. They actually put them in his mouth. Those are all real practical bees and all that stuff.
Hey, bar god fact. I just had a bar about that. I said they always think Danny playing. I catch your bitch and sting her in the mouth like candy. I just said that versus Emerson Kennedy. So shout out to Tony Todd with the bees in the mouth.
Hell yeah.
Bees in the trap.
Good shit.
So you guys agree that's a good one?
Candyman, yeah. I think that was the first time we seen a black antagonist as the lead in a horror film.
But
that
also,
the first time?
just the iconography, I think of that, like I mentioned before, you have your Jasons, you have your Freddys, you have that stuff, but he's probably if he's not the first, he's definitely the most iconic, I'd say.
Alright, so for number 8, I went with, it's a lesser known movie, it's called The Signal, came out in 2007. It actually has 3 different directors. It's this crazy mindfuck of a film where it's there's these radio waves being sent through the radio, the television, and it's making people it's making them go down to their most primal instincts. It taps into their insecurities or their wrath or their anger, and they all start attacking each other. It's not really a zombie movie per se, but it's definitely a psychological film, and it's broken up into 3 sections, and each section is directed by a different person, but it's all one story.
So all the actors and all the characters, they're all the same, but I guess it's different transmissions.
Yeah.
So the way you watch the movie is transmission 1, that segment's directed by somebody, and then they'll come out and have their take on these characters, how they act.
All right.
And then the second director comes, transmission 2, a different flavor, different theme. Maybe this one's not straight up darker horror, maybe it's more about violence, or maybe this one's kind of got that humor element that you see.
Yeah, it's a little bit of humor, yeah. And honestly, we saw one commercial, me and my brother, and we saw this late night show. We saw it at 11 o'clock at night, and then the theater was empty. It was just me and you, and I just expected, whatever, we're bored, let's see a movie. And by the end of it, I was like, that's really good. More people need to hear about that movie. You know, it's The Signal. Like I said, it came out in 2007.
I gotta check that one.
After you're done with this video, hit up IMDb, check it out.
Check out The Signal.
Yeah. So let's
let me know in the comments if y'all seen that too.
Yeah. Number, let's see, what are we at? 7, I believe. 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay. The Ring remake. The Ring.
The United States version of the Ring, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I like Ringu, don't get me wrong, but the first way I saw that movie was the American remake of the movie. And usually horror remakes get this kind of bad rep, you know, for like not being as good as the original and everything. But when I saw it, Gore
Verbinski is the
Gore Verbinski directed it. It's not a bad director at all.
Oh, yeah.
And when I saw it, and like, usually I fucking can't stand like CGI and overuse of effects in horror movies. But even in that movie, like when she comes out of the TV and all that kind of stuff, like there's still something so just, I don't know, really creepy about it, the way the music is used. The Ring always stuck with me. Like I saw it, I remember middle school or high school, and The Ring is like one of my favorite horror remakes ever.
I was 10. I think honestly, you know, I can't say too much about that movie, but I think that just the ambiguity of that story, you know, how like you don't really know what's going on, like why is it tape doing this to people, and kind of uncovering that, that's one of the better parts.
Yeah,
alright.
I love The Ring, and you fuck with The Ring? No, come on.
I won't go back to it. Nah, I won't mess with The Ring.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Nah, I'm not dealing with The Ring.
Wait, so wait, hold on, real quick.
She was scared.
What do you
Samara.
mean? Do you mean like rewatchability in terms of how you feel about its quality, or if it's like that it's scary? What do you mean by I will fuck with it?
I think you could appreciate it again if you tried it one more time.
If she came out of this TV right here, would you fuck her up?
Well,
or would you run out of here?
I think he's thinking of Scary Movie 3.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
I think that
this is what I'm saying.
Okay, hold on. I'm not okay. Just a little spoiler. I can't say much because I might say some stuff later.
All right.
So let's keep going. Let's keep it going.
All right, next.
All right. Next on my list is a movie called Possession. It is a let's see. It's a French-German co-production, and it was actually shot in Berlin. And the director is Polish, so it has all these different aspects to it. Now, the language spoken in the movie is English. It has Sam Neill in it. I had to write down the girl's name. Isabel.
Second Sam Neill.
Isabel. Yeah,
second appearance by Sam Neill.
With Sam Neill.
All right. Shout out to Sam Neill.
Got Sam Neill.
Doing your thing, player.
I had to write down her name. Her name is Isabella Johnny, I believe you say it. The reason why I love The Possession is because, like, it has my favorite. Well, next to the mom from Hereditary, it has my favorite female performance in a horror movie. That actress, like, you feel like she just literally just lost her fucking mind for the performance of that movie, just for the
character.
Yeah, she's nuts in that film, and it's just, and I didn't even see it that long ago. And honestly, Possession, like, as soon as I saw it, and by the time it was over, it's so fucking good and freaky, and I just could see it in my mind just entering the top 10 right off there.
I want just to kind of add a little bit about that movie. One of the things I really liked about it is I like the build. Because you think it's about one thing, and then it starts to kind of like morph, and all these characters get introduced, like the gentleman that Sam Neill's character believes that his girlfriend or wife is cheating on him with.
Yeah.
That over the top, like, flamboyant guy.
Oh, he's like, oh.
He's like very, and then it kind of just builds and builds until you're like, is this movie about what it's about?
Yeah.
You know, not to spoil anything.
Also, IMDb that movie.
Yeah, the more known films, stuff like that, obviously people are gonna know. Like if you bring up, you know, Jason or Freddy or whatever. But a movie like that, I think, is that it's not so well known. So maybe it should be, the less said about it, the better for people that want to see it.
And I think that's also a cult classic. I ain't trying to sound like a artsy fartsy
art house man,
pretentious dude, but I just love these movies, you know, because I know that with my list I could easily put, you know, Texas Chainsaw or Halloween or all this stuff, but there's some that just spoke to me on a psychological level.
And that's dope. That's dope. You know, that's why I'm asking you guys your top 10. Yeah. You know, I had Rain, I had the homie Anti-Fable on. They gave me their top 10. They had a couple off-kilter, off-brand joints on there as well. We don't want just the mainstream typical things you're gonna hear all the time. Oh, I like Child's Play. I like Halloween. I like you know,
everyone. Like my top 4: Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3.
Yeah,
Scream 4.
we want variety. We want different flavor on here, man.
So next up, it's speaking of pretentious shit. Okay, so it's a French film called Martyrs. And if you're into shocking films, that's probably, to me, Martyrs is more shocking than movies like a Serbian film or Human Centipede 2 or shit like that, you know?
More shocking than
because a Serbian film to me is like shock for the sake of shock, and it tries to pretend it's deep, you know, in certain ways, but it just seems like they just thought of shit that like no one should write down or film, and they actually filmed it. But with Martyrs, it has this almost like spiritual, psychological aspect to like the deepest, just, you know, like the tortures that a human mind and body can go through. And, you know, they put it on there, but it has like more of like a parallel cosmic sort of value to it. I don't want to spoil it, you know what I mean? Yeah, but it's great. It has great performances. It's part of the they call it the new wave horror, like Irreversible and Inside. But Martyrs to me has always been one of my favorite French movies,
the original,
movies. And I think the original. And I think when French people, as opposed to like American horror, when French people make horror movies, it's like no comedy. They're just in it to fucking make you feel like you need to take a shower afterwards. They want you to feel dirty and grimy and depressed for the next couple days. And I can respect that because it takes balls to make those kind of movies, you know, and I think that's where I respect the film a lot.
I enjoyed Martyrs when I first saw it. I like the idea of, you know, these characters being effectively tortured. You know what I mean?
It's not just that though.
Yeah,
it's not
it's like so there's torture elements in the movie. Obviously, it's high gore. It's not like in the conventional sense meant to be like a supernatural type of horror film. So, you know, when you see things like that happening to these people, obviously, you know, like when you see things like that happening to the young girls of the film, and, you know, you wonder, like, these girls are getting tortured, but they're almost meant to be, like, sacrificial in a way.
Exactly, yeah, martyrs.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but we don't want to say any more. Just look it up. Number 4, for all my all-time favorites, I think you all have heard of it, Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, oh, wow.
Jacob's Ladder has iconic imagery. You know, a lot of horror movies like The Shining, you know, you know a lot of the imagery, like all work and no play, and you know the blood coming out of the elevator, and you know like the kid on the
twins?
Yeah, the twins, Play With Us, Danny. Right. But Jacob's Ladder has imagery like that too, like where he's in the bathtub with the ice, or when he's being rolled through on that gurney, and he sees all those hellish images.
Wow, man, that was a great movie.
It's like if I feel like it's. I don't want to say it's underappreciated because I think Jacob's Ladder should be appreciated by a bunch of people. You know, I don't know if it has the same marketability.
But it's not on the same level as some films that are actually underneath it in terms of quality.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's not like the brand name. It's not like,
well, no, it's not a. I wouldn't say it's a household of like a property is like Halloween or
right. It's not that.
Well, but then again, you have to remember that, like, with the exception of the recent remake, that's only a one and done film.
A one and done.
So it won't be like on the same level as like Child's Play.
Right.
But that's because it's one movie.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't have the brand or like and there's no like killer.
Was that Tim Robbins?
Tim Robbins, yeah. Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins?
Yeah, Tim Robbins did a great performance.
Same guy from Mystic River.
One of the things also about that film,
he's cold-blooded, man. He's cold, man. That dude's amazing.
Now, speaking of a movie that had a one-off, this movie is part of a franchise, and when I look at this franchise, I know that there's 3 really solid ones I could have chose, and what I landed on for my number 3 pick is Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I could have chose, in my opinion, I could have chose Nightmare on Elm Street 1, I could have chose 3, or I could have chose Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I love those 3. The rest are, they got some cool parts in them, don't get me wrong, but Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I saw it when I was like 5 years old. It freaked me the fuck out, and still to this day, like, I think it has some of the best lines, some of the best deaths in the movie, and I love Freddy Krueger, obviously. I love Freddy, and I think Nightmare on Elm Street 3, everyone always wants to say the first one's the best, and other people say that the second best is part 3. I think the best is Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
I think that out of all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, that one is always kind of flown under the radar, but as the fan favorite. It's weird how it's been, because you'd imagine, like, okay, Nightmare on Elm Street and all the kills that happened in the first one with, you know, the bed sheet around his neck and in the prison, or, you know, the Johnny Depp getting sucked into the bed and the giant hurricane of blood, you know, like a tornado of blood comes out and stuff like that. But people have always kind of said, like, the more personal deaths that are actually relevant to the characters in the kids in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Exactly, like you took their personality and you fucked with them in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, with Nightmare on Elm Street 3, like, that's the one where Freddy started to become more of like a character. it didn't go too much into comedy, how like 4 and 5 and 6 did. So
that's what kind of
if you were to
see
people parody Freddy nowadays, like they'll do it in a way where like they're doing the like, you know, he still has, you know, welcome to prime time, bitch, and shit like that, but like that's the Freddy that people like. To me, that's where he reached his character, and that's where it should have stayed. Like, you know, that dark and never too cartoony.
That was the movie,
you know,
I think, just to kind of like put a pin on that one and just kind of let this end, you know, go to the next entry. I want to say that A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the movie where Freddy Krueger actually became the main character of the stories, and it was all about watching him do stuff.
Number 2 is a movie called Angel Heart, and it stars Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro. And it came out, I believe,
I want to say
80s, late 80s.
I want to say it's a late 80s, early 90s film. Yeah, that's
personally, it has elements that I love. It has noir, it has voodoo aspects to it. It has hellacious types things. It's like the movie's very poetic in the way it tells its story. And you know, it's about Mickey Rourke. He's a private investigator, and he has to find this dude for Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro's character is very mysterious, and I don't want to get into too much about it, but Angel Heart definitely is underrated. Cult film, that's underappreciated.
And you figure
more than Jacob's Ladder, actually.
Oh yeah, and you figure though, because of who's in it, like Robert De Niro is probably one of the biggest actors on the planet.
And he's done. And the other horror movie he's been in was like Hide and Seek, I think.
His or it was Godsend.
And yeah, Godsend.
Yeah, he was a Godsend. Oh yeah, where he brings that kid back.
Yeah. And you ready for number 1?
Am I ready for number 1? Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Number 1, my all-time favorite movie is Pet Sematary.
Alright.
Okay.
Original Pet Sematary. You know a movie's good when it scares you as a kid, you still watch it as an adult, and you're like, nope, still holds up, everything still creeps me out. Gage, Zelda, everything about it, the music is perfect. Like, you know, I've even read the book, and I think the movie does do the book justice. All the elements came together really well for Pet Sematary, and like, you know, I talk about all these movies in the middle of my list that are a little less known, and Pet Sematary, everybody knows Pet Sematary, like who hasn't heard of Pet Sematary? But it's number 1 for a reason. It's like other people have Exorcist as their number 1, and I love Exorcist, don't get me wrong, I thought about putting it in my top 10, but just, for me, on a personal level, with everything, it's gonna always be Pet Sematary, and I think you guys can see why I would put that as number 1.
That's a very respectable top 10. Y'all let me know in the comments what y'all feel about Paulo Paul's top 10s. Horror films. You know, if you want to chime in, you could at him on Twitter.
You could tell me it's a trash ass list. It's okay. You're not gonna hurt my feelings.
It's all about it's just your list.
Yeah.
Starting my list at number 10 is going to be a little more of a recent film. It's going to be Oculus.
That slept on.
Oculus, I think, is super underrated. I really like the premise of the movie. I like one of the thing that I like the most about it is the fact that the film itself is told in like a non-linear fashion. So what that means, you know, obviously, is that you have the main crux of the story, but then the movie will jump back through time, show you kind of how we got there.
Alright.
So one day we were on Netflix and I was like, I saw a commercial for Oculus. The bitch eats a light bulb or some shit like that.
Right? When she's gonna eat an apple, but then she bites the
And then we
light bulb.
put it on and like, halfway through I'm looking at you and I'm like, this is actually decent, bro. This is actually really good. And like,
not a bad choice.
Yeah.
Not a bad choice.
So now, my number 9. So, just want to preface my number 9 really quickly is that I know that a lot of people would put my number 9 film easily in the top 5, top 3 or whatever. So, I just want to preface and say that my number 9 is The Exorcist.
Okay.
So, that's a movie that
my bad.
I hadn't seen that movie.
I could just hear the comments.
How's
that not number 1, man?
Well, that wasn't even on your list.
So it was like 11. It was like 11.
So yeah, so my whole thing is with The Exorcist. With The Exorcist is that that's a movie that I didn't see until I was already like 25.
So you already knew all the bullet points.
A lot of the beats, a lot of the I guess iconic imagery, a lot of like the things that you see on like top 10 lists, like scariest moments, or like, you know, on your conventional top 10 horror movies list. The head spinning, the vomit, all that stuff I had already seen. But the thing is about that movie is I learned to appreciate it a different way outside of the raw, kind of gritty, like body scares of like, oh, her head spinning and she's crawling down the banister and doing the crab walk. I like that movie because it feels like a very kind of dreary drama. The whole story of the father and how he's losing his faith, and he feels guilty over his mother's death, so he's going to kind of redeem himself and trying to save this innocent little girl who you see in the movie go from like this happy-go-lucky little girl into eventually what she becomes.
Oh, and her performance, by the way.
Oh, yeah, all the performances in the movie.
That's true.
Are great.
It's all the performances. Yeah.
So this one, I think, the list now is going to get into films that would kind of be more thrillery. I think.
Okay.
So number 8, it's going to be Split.
Okay, see that's hard though.
It's hard, but here's the thing.
You consider it a horror?
I consider it a thriller. Well, first of all, M. Night Shyamalan's not his stuff. He's not like outside of the realm of doing things like The Sixth Sense or well, people would consider Signs a horror movie because of the alien, but is that movie really scary? I think the eeriness of like a maniac kidnapping like these girls.
There are horror elements. You know when he's turning
it's like it's like senseless. You know what I mean? Like those types of aspects, and plus he's like killing the girls, or when the girl's like trying to get in the room and he just like rips her apart, or he like grabs people and breaks their back. And also the thing that kind of sets that movie apart from any of the movies I think would be on my list is like James McAvoy in that role, switching from like personality to personality.
But horror though.
Kills it. Horror. I said horror thriller, and you can't tell me who's not thriller.
Is it labeled
so what
as
is
a horror
it then? So what is it then? If it's not thriller, what is it?
It's an X-Men movie.
Let me know in the comments. Is Split a horror film or a thriller?
I'm kidding.
I prefaced my list and I'm still getting shit. He doesn't make
I know, right? He said,
I already told you.
I told you that it's going to be a thriller.
Now
you're giving me shit. We didn't expect Split, though.
People watching this expect your standard like Rosemary's Baby and
The Shining,
and
you know.
So whatever.
I like
I
it.
respect
I respect it. Exactly.
I'm gonna have the IMDb though if it even says that it's labeled as a horror.
So
check it out right now.
Parts where he's like crawling.
Check it out right now.
This is very contentious. That's fine.
Let's keep
Listen,
going.
we're gonna keep going. Paul can, moving along. This is another movie on my list, and this one would kind of not be conventional, I would say, but my number. Shit, I gotta check the number. Sorry.
Number 7.
Number 7. It's going to be Final Destination 2.
Nice.
So the thing about the Final Destination movies.
All right, it's a horror.
Horror?
2. Split is a horror thriller.
Bars your ass.
Oh my god.
Bars your ass.
You were against me too.
Just hit me with.
I know. No, but I give you props because he was right.
All right, whatever.
I had to give you props because he was right.
I knew I was right. Anyway,
so right.
Hold on. Just, my next movie is going to be Final Destination 2. And the thing that those movies as a franchise, the thing they really excel at, kind of prey on your like preconceived fears over things. Like the first one's about flying,
of course.
And like roller coasters in part 3. But
they go on a racetrack.
But whatever. Like,
part 4 sucks.
Part 4 sucks. Nobody cares. Okay. But the thing about Final Destination 2 is that everybody drives on the highway for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And we all think about like, oh, what if there's like a crash? I can't trust other drivers. Okay. Or like you see a log truck and there's an iconic scene in the beginning of part 2 where
now people look at a fucking log truck.
But they think that movie. But the thing before that, I didn't give a shit. That's what I'm saying. You're making my point for me.
So basically what I'm saying is that Final Destination 2 is on my top 10 list because that's a movie that, for lack of a better term, has stuck with me all these years. That movie's managed to kind of instill paranoia and bits of anxiety within me due to its main premise, due to that great scene on the freeway with the pileup happening and all the cars crashing and stuff like that. Because we've all been in that scenario, I want to say at least once or twice, where we're on the road and there's a lot of cars, there's a lot of traffic. So that movie managed to take something that we all do in our everyday life and make you a little bit more paranoid about it and kind of have it loop in the back of your head and wonder and be like, oh man, this is like Final Destination 2, or, that scene is just so good, so good. So, moving on to my next movie on the list at number 6, it's going to be the first Insidious. I feel like, well, first of all, I love Patrick Wilson and I love Rose Byrne, and I think that's just a great supernatural horror flick. I'm big on supernatural movies, and I don't know, it's just a great movie. It's got great tone, it's got great scenes. I'm just a huge fan.
So, yeah, I would say that because you kind of see the demonic possession affecting people more, I guess, like literally in that movie, because there's that scene with like the big red demon where he's behind Patrick Wilson's stuff.
Insidious was dope, y'all.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, see it.
The second one's like,
no, they get progressively weirder. But we're gonna go to my number 5, and my number 5 is gonna be Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So the reasons why I like
one of the ones that I could have chosen.
So there's like, and I totally agree where it's like the best ones are 1, 3, or Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And the reason why I would have chosen something like Wes Craven's New Nightmare over the original, and how like that movie was like an explosion that sent that franchise into pop culture history, and 3, which was the fan favorite, is because Wes Craven's New Nightmare other than the fact that it's just a good movie, you know, it's super meta, it's in the real world, Freddy is a character in that movie as the movie star or movie character. The reason why I picked that is because that movie had to do so much heavy lifting to make Freddy Krueger be taken seriously again. Because think of it this way, like, and even if, so I'll count 3 too, because 3 is also kind of like has some humor, like Welcome to Primetime, bitch, and Freddy turns into
Welcome. I love that shit.
Yeah, or like he's like, when he's like in the mirror, and then like all that shit. So like, you go to Freddy 4, the dog pisses on his bones, and fire comes out, and Freddy comes back to life. Or like the Dream Master, and you know, and also like
just started making
the Dream Master,
or then 3D with Freddy's Dead. Wes Craven's New Nightmare was like, man, he's so fucked up as a character to be taken seriously and scary. What can I, is like Wes Craven, what can I do? Oh yeah, also rest in peace Wes Craven. Yeah. But
Hollywood, don't make Scream 5.
Yeah, don't make Scream 5. Let it end. End just leave his movies alone now. But the thing is that movie is like, okay, well, what can we do?
To the legend.
The idea, and if you haven't seen Wes Craven's Nightmare, I don't care. I'm still gonna talk about it. The idea that they say, okay, well, there is this being in this world that capitalizes and like infects people with their own fear and takes the form of Freddy Krueger. And they make him a lot darker, and he's like bigger, and the makeup is different, and he has like a trench coat, and you know he just.
I know that Wes Craven with his writing, he's very much into like, or he was very much into like Eastern philosophy, and he was very much into like conquering your fears and things like that, and you know with Freddy and Wes Craven's New Nightmare, it definitely is about how like your collective fears in this world, if it can grow large enough and it can be deep enough, it can actually manifest this sort of evil that can come into the real world.
For my number 4 pick, I'm going to go ahead and have to choose another movie that's going to kind of be in like the thriller ballpark. Maybe a lot of people won't consider it horror, but horrific things definitely happen in the movie. It's going to be 7. Now, my whole thing with 7 is I just...
Yeah, you're right. Horrific things happen, so it could be considered...
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. So, that movie, I think, one of the things I've always kind of enjoyed about movies like that and like previously how you mentioned, you know, we keep coming back to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I like the idea of like... And I don't mean this in a bad way, but like novelty or like kind of gimmick kills and segments. So that movie's kind of based around the 7 Deadly, not kind of, it is. It's based around the 7 Deadly Sins. So there's a character who is gluttony, and that guy's kind of fed to death, or sloth. And that scene, yeah, just to put that scene where they kind of uncover the guy and they're like thinking he's dead and he comes to life.
Oh my god, that's iconic.
Shit. Yeah, exactly.
That's iconic
in that movie. And then
how did they even pull that off?
I don't know. They must have got a seriously anorexic dude.
Man, because I was always thinking like, is that a person or is that a
like a prop?
And I want to. Is that animatronic? I didn't. Hey, shout out to 7. I actually did a blog about that film on my channel, so check it out in case you haven't seen it.
And I want to point out
that's a fantastic pick.
If Saw could be considered horror,
right?
And
Okay.
7 has some elements that are similar. Like in terms of like, you know, torturing people who were wrong.
Torture, detectives and
it might not go into detail.
And that ending, there's 2 other scenes too I kind of want to mention. The scene where I believe it was Lust, and the guy had to put on like a knife.
Oh yeah. We can't talk about that on YouTube.
A knife, right? You know, a provocative kind of adult toy, and where he's explaining it, and he's in the interrogation room.
That was also.
And then that whole ending scene, from the scene where Kevin Spacey's character John Doe, I don't even know the hell the guy's name is. He just from when he turns himself in, and they drive him out to the desert, and he gives that monologue in the car, and Brad Pitt's character succumbs to wrath, and he's just, you know, he doesn't want to shoot him, but he's like, dude, this guy, you put her head in a box, like you're done now.
Me rewatching that movie and how Kevin Spacey acts in that movie, and with his bald head. Rewatching that movie made me realize, like, no, I'm about to say why.
Okay.
With his bald head, made me realize that he, back in the day, would have made a really good Mr. Freeze.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hot take. Very hot take.
Hot take, baby. Okay. You know, he can't do it nowadays, obviously.
Oh, no, I don't know what he can do nowadays.
Okay, anyways.
Mr. Freeze's bank counts now. Shit. He's not gonna make no bread right now.
he's all, his bakery's closed down. He can't make any bread.
Yikes.
Bars. So, we're going to number 3.
Closed down, you can't make any bread. I'm not gonna put one in that. You just ghost wrote that for me live. On the show.
All right.
I'm gonna use it.
Okay. So I just want to talk a bit about number 3. My number 3 choice is, this might be the first repeat. Number 3 is Pet Sematary. for me.
All right.
So Pet Sematary, just to kind of take what you said and kind of talk about maybe a different angle, and the original Pet Sematary, not the remake. So one of the things about that movie that kind of gets overlooked is that the story really is about like loss.
Obviously,
and how you deal with it.
Get overlooked.
Well, no, because people think of like, oh, like Zelda. It is so creepy how she's all bony and strange looking.
Oh, it's about like, how far would you go if you lost somebody?
Exactly.
You can act like you're totally normal.
So like the whole point is like, oh man, like the cat gets run over. I can't have my kid deal with loss, so I'm gonna bring that cat back. Or like, oh man, like my kid died, like I can't process loss, so I'm just gonna like bring him back. And then the wife's character in the movie, she talks about Zelda and how she was kind of happy that she died. She was like, Zelda's dead, Zelda's dead, all that stuff. So the movie is really about people trying to fight back against the inevitable, even if it's going to actually fuck everything up.
Yeah.
And then you see like the scenes with the cat with Church when he jumps out and he tries to scare him, and they invert the lens on the camera so Church's eyes are like.
And that's Stephen King for you.
Yeah, no, that was great. I think
Stephen King knows how to write grief. Like better than anybody.
Yeah,
one of the best scenes in the movie.
Especially you know that if you read his books.
Yeah.
You know, he's definitely got a way with words. You know, when he's writing his book. But from a visual standpoint, with what that movie did, there's one scene in particular that's kind of like, oh man, like, you know, more so than like the violence or like the Achilles tendon getting cut and all that stuff. There's a scene where they're in the funeral and the father-in-law says like, you got my grandson killed, and he shoves him into the casket, and the casket door opens for a second. You see Gage's arm, and you're like, ooh, like shit.
And the director, I heard her say something like, the reason why they wanted to put that in there is because it represents like where his hand kind of almost comes out of the casket, his dead body. It almost represents like later on, like Gage literally like metaphorically escapes death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he leaves like
really. Yeah. So that's my number 3 is the original.
I wholeheartedly agree with that one.
My number 2 is going to be the first Saw. Now, you typically, like I said before, like this is going to be more thriller, because Saw's not a movie where like ghosts haunt a house or like a demon takes over somebody, you know. And so it's not really like that.
But cuts his foot off. It's a horror movie.
Well, yeah, exactly. So the things the direct
horrifying. Yes, right.
Yeah.
Saw has a very just extreme visual style. Like the way that they have that's like their style. That whole like the camera rotates around and people have to like move their heads, and it has like that. You know what I'm talking about? That gritty, dark, like trapped, claustrophobic style of that movie. That's what I've always really appreciated about the first Saw. You know, that movie's like the first one that came out. You know, eventually it blew up into a franchise, but the first one that came out had a very low budget, kind of like, oh, we're just 2 guys want to make a movie.
So it's like it's very respectable at the same time.
Exactly, and then they did so much with so little. Is what I really appreciate about the first Saw. And then plus, obviously, like the traps became iconic, and the Tobin Bell's performance as Jigsaw became iconic. And Billy the Puppet. Like that movie.
Yeah, plus you're not going to see that guy in any other movie.
You're like, that's Jigsaw. Like, I mean, it's like seeing Robert Englund.
Shout out to Tobin Bell for just grasping that character and making it his. Like, you can't see nobody else being.
Yeah, no, of course.
Just like you said, Robert Englund, like, he's Freddy.
Yeah,
I don't care who you go get. Yeah. That's Robert Englund's Freddy. Like Tobin Bell is gonna be Jigsaw forever. Even like, are they gonna like bring a new Jigsaw in?
Well, we were supposed to see Spiral last week.
Spiral's come out May 15th, but you know everything's.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah. But could you imagine someone else taking his place? He was training. Never mind. We'll talk about that later. We'll explore Saw later on.
I will say I agree with that pick. I didn't expect it to be so high up on the list. I thought it would be more like.
Let me tell you what.
Because we always talk about which Saw is our favorite. I'm the weird one that thinks Saw 3 is like the best.
No, Saw 1 I think is. But here's the thing.
Even Saw 2 is dope though.
Here's the thing.
Saw 6 is dope.
So here's the thing. That movie, when it came out back in 2004, that was one film, and for some reason, I don't know if the planets aligned or whatever it was, but that movie, even though there was one film, it like solidified its place in horror films and like among the greats.
Yeah.
It was instantly like that, like Billy the Puppet and Jigsaw's voice.
Yeah.
And Do You Want to Play a Game? Like all those things, things hit the genre and stuck. It wasn't like, oh, delayed appreciation. Maybe 5-10 years later, people like Saw. No.
Nah, they
saw it. That generation needed a franchise.
And they needed a franchise because they had the 90s Judge horror movies and the 80s Judge horror movies and the 70s. But there was nothing like for the new millennium that was like nothing's really becoming a franchise. So my number one horror movie, and this movie on the list is going to be another repeat, but this movie's... Okay, when I made this list, I thought of number 1 and then thought of the other ones. No doubt in my brain that when I thought of it, I was like, well, this is number 1. This is the movie that scared me. And it was The Ring, 2002. That's why I didn't say much when you were talking about it.
Alright.
One of the things, just to kind of talk
Why
about...
do you always do that? You don't like The Ring?
Is The Ring not scary? Is that like thriller? Is that horror? Is ghosts? How many requirements do you need? I don't understand.
No, go ahead. It's your list.
Okay. I think, personally, The Ring has a certain style, a certain tone to it, where the movie's visual kind of color palette is very, like, blue. It's very dark.
I like that.
Very dark. And one of the things about The Ring is that The Ring also doesn't have any jokes. There's no, like, haha, like this is a...
Yeah, no levity.
No, yeah, and it gets progressively more, I think, like, depressing over time. There are a lot of scenes you think about, like, there's that scene towards the end where that guy is, I believe it's like Samara's, like, foster father. He takes the toaster or whatever it is, he throws it in the bathtub and fries himself. And you're like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on with these people? And it's like,
also, don't forget the sound effects, like the noises whenever people get killed. It's like it like drills in your ear.
When you watch that intro scene of The Ring, the way it was shot, when those two girls are kind of like, I watched this tape, and you think it's bullshit. You think it's like, oh, whatever the fuck.
That was dope.
And then like it's like, no, something's building, and
the special effects on that girl's face where she's dead in the closet like this still. That was one of those images that just burned into my brain.
And and like those weird little things, like, oh, if you've watched the tape and someone takes a picture of you, your face is all fucked up, and like nobody really knows why.
Yeah.
Like weird things like that, where she pulls the hair out of her mouth.
You know what? Yeah, I might have been tripping.
Okay, yeah, you definitely.
Yeah, I might have been.
He just didn't remember the movie.
No, I might have been sleeping on The Ring.
See, the thing is that when
they did have some iconic fucking scenes.
When he brought up The Ring, he was like, "Oh, the little girl comes out of the TV," and that's not the thing that scares me the most. The thing about that movie that scares me the most is all those other smaller scenes, like what the fuck's going on, or like when you watch the tape. The actual tape, the imagery in the tape with like the ladder and like the chair that moves and like the bugs and like weird shit, or like the woman, which I guess is Samara's mom, like throws herself from the cliffside, and then the actual image of the well, and then when you see that the ring is the last thing Samara saw because it was the light peering through the well,
and that brings
see, you gotta think all that shit up.
Hey, you know what, man?
That brings up a good point.
Hey, you know what? I'm glad that y'all like, and this is good. This is why we do the shit like this. It's like, oh, you gotta bring me up to date. You gotta bar me. You gotta bar me and reopen my brain to this. Like, yo, Danny, you have been sleeping on The Ring. Like, why? Why have you been sleeping on The Ring? You know why? I think probably because I just fell into it was just parodied so much, and then it kind of they made it cliche crazy. It was
AKA
bars. It was cliche. It was like I see so many. There were video game characters based on it.
Yeah.
Y'all just making this shit into a joke, and that's probably what took away like some of the originality.
That's how somebody would look back if let's say they saw a scary movie first and then they saw Scream. It's kind of like, oh, it's ruined for me now because now but honestly, if you watch it like how we did, again, how I said that a few back on my list when I brought up the movie The Signal. And when we just randomly saw it 11 o'clock at night, we saw one commercial. Same exact thing for The Ring. We saw a commercial, just probably half of it one night. It was like an 11:10 showing, I believe, at the theater.
Like I was 10 years old.
Yeah, you were young.
It was like 2002. I'm like, I was like, let's go see this movie. He's like, The Ring. I'm like, the fuck is that?
And I was like, 2 tickets to The Ring, please.
10 years old?
Yeah.
You got in?
We're watching it, and
my mom was like, no, that's good. But also, here's something to think about too. PG-13 rating. How many truly like scary movies with like no blood?
Right.
No blood, no like stab wounds or fire demons and blood.
And still make it.
And still be like, what the
scary.
And I also want to point out that like I love movies that freak me out a lot are the ones where you're in like in a claustrophobic setting. So like this movie called Buried with Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. There's Phone Booth with Colin Farrell where you're stuck in one little tiny area, right? And in like you said, The Ring, where she gets trapped in that well. If you are the type of moviegoer where you don't just watch it like this, where you actually put yourself in the position of the character, to imagine that, to be locked in a dark well,
it's horrifying.
That to me is like, it's that sort of visceral shit that scares you. You
exactly. Know what I mean? And just to kind of put the little end on it with my list, one of the things I wanted to say before is that when she watches that video and then it goes day 1, and you're like, oh shit, and then it's like day 2 and she still hasn't figured anything out. You're like, oh man, like she's gonna fucking die.
Yeah. And the videotape is scary.
And the kid watches it. And you're like, and she's like, no, and she like the screamer, she's like, no.
Yeah.
And then she's like, now I have to figure out to save myself.
That actually is one of how
Don't sleep on the ring.
how I was talking earlier.
I've been sleeping on it, man. I've been sleeping on it, man. I'm gonna have to watch it. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to watch it. I'm gonna have to put me a ring bar somewhere in there.
Yeah.
One of these battles, man. So that'll conclude this week's podcast. So salute to everybody. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments what y'all feel about his list. What about Angel's list? Yep. And we got a lot more coming. Gaming Wednesday will return this Wednesday, so stay on the lookout for that. Peace.
Peace, everybody.
Alrighty. All right.